I never thought I'd be the type to stand up to my HOA. But when Karen Whitmore decided to target me, she picked the wrong retired teacher to mess with. It started innocuously enough. I'd moved into Sunset Grove Estates 3 years ago after my husband passed, hoping for a quiet retirement community where I could enjoy my garden and host my grandchildren on weekends. The HOA seemed reasonable at first basic rules about lawn maintenance and noise levels. Nothing too intrusive. But then Karen was elected HOA president. Within weeks, she'd implemented new guidelines that felt more like edicts from a tyrannical ruler. Pink flamingos were banned. Garden gnomes were considered unsightly. She even tried to dictate what color welcome mats we could have, beige or gray only, because apparently a cheerful red mat was too rebellious for her tastes. I kept my head down, followed the rules, and minded my own business until the letter arrived. It was a Thursday morning when I found the official HOA notice in my mailbox. The heading read, "Violation notice and corrective action required." My hands trembled as I read the contents. According to Karen's new interpretation of our bylaws, homeowners were limited to having no more than 4 guest vehicles on the property at any given time, including street parking in front of our homes. This couldn't be right. My daughter was planning to bring the whole family for Thanksgiving next month. That was 3 cars right there. Add my son's family, and we'd be at 5 vehicles. Was Karen seriously suggesting I couldn't have my entire family over for the holidays? I marched straight to Karen's house. Letter in hand. She answered the door with that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Oh, Margaret," she said, as if she'd been expecting me. "I assume you're here about the parking situation." "Karen, this rule is ridiculous. How can you limit how many guests someone has?" She crossed her arms, her smile turning smug. "It's not about limiting guests, Margaret. It's about maintaining property values and preventing our streets from looking like parking lots. The bylaws clearly state that we can regulate parking on community property, which includes our streets. But my family should perhaps consider staying at a hotel if they in carpool," she interrupted. "Rules are rules. You have 2 weeks to acknowledge receipt of this notice, and violations will result in a $50 fine per day. Per extra vehicle." I left her porch fuming but determined. That evening, I did what I should have done from the beginning. I actually read our HOA bylaws. All 73 pages of them, and nowhere, absolutely nowhere, did it say the HOA had authority to limit guest parking or the number of visitors a homeowner could have. The next morning, I called my neighbor, Robert, who'd served on the HOA board before Karen's regime. He confirmed my suspicions. Karen had overstepped her authority, but he warned me that fighting her would be an uphill battle. She'd already intimidated several neighbors into submission. I wasn't going to be intimidated. I spent the next week gathering evidence. I documented every car on our street during peak hours, noting that we rarely had more than a few guest vehicles at any time. I talked to other neighbors who'd received similar letters. Turns out I was Aunt Karenis. Only Targshidi sent notices to anyone who dared to host family gatherings. Then I remembered something from my teaching days. When dealing with administrative overreach, go above their heads. In this case, that meant the county. I made an appointment with the County Clerk's office, specifically with a woman named Patricia, who handled HOA registrations and compliance. Patricia was in her 50s, professional, and immediately interested when I explained the situation. "May I see your HOAs governing documents?" she asked. I handed over copies of everything: our original bylaws, the articles of incorporation, and Karen's recent letters. Patricia spent 20 minutes reviewing the documents, occasionally making notes. Finally, she looked up with a knowing smile. "Your HOA president has a problem," she said. "A big one." She explained that while HOAs could regulate parking on community-owned property, our streets were public roads maintained by the county. The HOA had zero authority to restrict parking on public streets. Furthermore, any attempt to limit visitors to private property could potentially violate fair housing laws and property rights. "But here's the real issue," Patricia continued, pulling out another document. "Your HOA's bylaws require that any new rules must be voted on by the homeowners and properly recorded with the county. Karen never filed any amendments with us, which means her new guidelines aren't legally enforceable." My heart soared. "So what can I do?" Patricia made copies of the relevant county codes and HOA regulations, then gave me a letter on official county letterhead explaining the legal situation. I'd suggest bringing this to your next HOA meeting. Sometimes people with a little authority need to be reminded that they're not above the law. The next HOA meeting was packed. Word had spread that someone was finally challenging Karen, and nearly every homeowner showed up. Karen sat at the front table, clearly irritated by the turnout. When it came time for new business, I stood up. I'd like to address the recent parking restrictions. Karen's jaw tightened. There's nothing to discuss. The rules have been implemented. Actually, I said calmly, walking to the front and handing her Patricia's letter. There's quite a bit to discuss. You see, I visited the county clerk's office. I watched the color drain from her face as she read the letter. I continued, addressing the room. These parking restrictions aren't legal. Our streets are public property. The HOA has no authority to limit guest parking. And more importantly, these rules were never properly voted on or recorded with the county as required by our bylaws. The room erupted in conversation. Other neighbors began sharing their grievances about Karen's overreach. Within Homeowner, the board voted unanimously to rescind all of Karen's unauthorized rules and to require proper procedures for any future policy changes. Karen resigned as president 2 weeks later. Thanksgiving that year was perfect. My entire family came. All 5 cars parked right in front of my house. As we sat around the dinner table, my grandson asked why I seemed so happy. I told him that sometimes standing up for what is right means doing your homework and knowing your rights. Now, I'd love to hear from you. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up to unreasonable HOAs. And tell me in the comments where. Are you watching from today? I love hearing from viewers all around the country.